In my class Canvas Prep, I talk a lot about why preparing your surface is crucial for your entire art process. And the most common way to prepare your surface is, of course, with gesso. But is store-bought gesso always better? Or can you make gesso yourself with all the products you already have at home? That's what we're going to explore today. What is gesso really? Gesso is basically made of three things: a filler, something that gives it body and texture, a binder to help it stick to your surface, and a pigment. Usually white, but you can tint it. That's something I like to do. Its main function is to give your surface a bit of a tooth so the paint will grip better, and it's also to protect your canvas or your paper underneath. And it could make your colors look brighter, neater, the paint can go smoother, and sometimes it helps to get rid of the suction of your canvas. So it's some kind of primer. I'm going to give you a few recipes. And the first one is the one you find all over YouTube. It's the simplest version, and it's really good if you just use it in your sketchbook or you use it on your own art, but not if you want to sell your art or want to gift it to someone who wants to enjoy it for, let's say, a lifetime. But I'll give you the simple journal version first. Okay, all you need is baby powder. You could also use cornstarch or calcium carbonate. Oh, I cannot even pronounce the word. Oh, calcium carbonate. But yeah, that could be a bit more expensive, or you maybe don't have it lying around at home. So I'm just choosing the baby powder or the cornstarch. It has an equal way to work in your gesso. So yeah, I'm taking this one. And then you need some PVA glue. It could be just normal school glue. I have it in a bottle, like it is. This is a bookbinder's glue. But yeah, your regular Elmer's will work perfectly fine. You need some water. And of course, you need some acrylic paint. And most people use the white paint because gesso is mainly white. But you could also use, like, for example, this one is the burnt umber because it suits portrait really, really well. So just pick what you want. And I'm going to show you how it works. It's not that hard, actually. I'm going to get a cup. And first we are going to put something in here. If I just make just a little bit, just take about a tablespoon of everything except for the white paint or the water. But I'm just going to eyeball it a bit. Let's say one of the baby powder. If you want to, you can activate it with water first. Some people do that. Some people like to do it. It's not really necessary. Let me just, I don't have a spoon here. I'll just do it. It's about a spoon as well. I'm going to add my PVA glue. It's about the same amount. And I'm just going to stir this. And while I'm stirring it, I'm going to tell you why you should not use regular acrylic paint as your base layer. I mean, it's white too, so why not use white paint instead of the white gesso? Well, first of all, it's more expensive, so why should you? You could easily just use the gesso for like half price compared to your acrylic paint. Second of all, it doesn't have a tooth, and that's why I'm using the baby powder to give it more of a tooth. Well, now I have this in there. I cannot say multiple things at a time because otherwise I forget what I put in here. Yes, I have the glue in here. I have the baby powder in here, and I'm taking just some white paint. Like I said, I had about a tablespoon of baby powder. I have a tablespoon of white glue, a little bit, half a tablespoon of water. And now I'm adding about half a tablespoon of white paint. And like I said, I'm eyeballing this a bit. Because it has to look like it's some kind of a pancake consistency. And that's more or less what you're going to use. And I think this one is done. I just put it aside, and I'm going to grab this because we're going to compare them all. But this is what it looks like. I'm putting it aside because I have another recipe. Well, first of all, it's not really a recipe. A lot of people think, well, why not just use, for example, house paint? And I have it in a smaller jar because otherwise it's just too much. Because you buy those in those big buckets. So why not choose white house paint? Well, actually, you could use house paint, but it will give you just a little bit more of less adhesion than gesso when you put acrylic paint on it. And the colors probably won't look more vibrant, but it does seal. And it takes you a bit longer than the other DIY we did. Still not like forever, like you want to have with those professional paintings, and that's why I use regular gesso. But if you want it just to last a lifetime, make it for your friends. It's perfectly fine. And they say it's latex house paint, but 9 out of 10 times it's acrylic paint. You just have to look at the ingredients and see if it has acrylic paint in there, and maybe some titanium dioxide, because then you know it's real white pigment like you have in the gesso. So you could use it, but still it doesn't really have a tooth to it. So a way to go about it is to add a tooth to your house paint. I'm just going to, I'll have to open the jar. Oh, this is hard. You know what? Let's get a different jar. This is just was on sale at my hardware store, and this has a little bit of different color. This opens a lot better. And of course, always with house paint, you have to stir it before you use it, just to mix all the ingredients well. I'm going to put some house paint in here, maybe a little bit more, because then it will be easier to stir. And I have it in here, and now it needs some tooth. And that could be like you're using the baby powder again. You could also say I'm using baking soda because that's getting really gritty, but I don't really like it because it's getting too gritty. So I'm putting this aside. You could use chalk. And I'm using this kind of chalk. So this is really for paint makers chalk. This could be more expensive. So when you're at the hardware store, you could also get some chalk there if you want to. You don't need to. If you could use this, it just gives it a little bit more of a quality again. So I'm putting some in here. And Again, eyeball it, but I do about half of the amount that I put in there from the house paint. So that should be enough. But when you think it's getting too thick, like it is right now, because I don't like the gesso to be too thick, you just add some water to the mix. Not too much, because if too much it gets too runny. Well, like I said before, if you get like it's looking like pancake batter, it's perfectly fine. Yes, and I think this is good. I'll put this aside. Well, still the best deal would be, I think, would be using gesso, the store-bought gesso, if you do it like professionally. But I also have another recipe, and that recipe is almost real gesso. It comes closer to the professional gesso because we got the filler, the binder, and the pigment. And for the filler, I'm going to use chalk, and I'm going to use the real good chalk. I'm now using the paint chalk. You could use different chalk, but I'm using the paint chalk. And I'm going to put it in here. Let's say it's about a tablespoon. And I like to activate it with a bit water. And I'm going to say it's about half a tablespoon. Oh, it's like this. I'll just use this one to mix. I'm using quite a little. Maybe I should have done this on my palette so you can like really mix it, because you don't want the lumps, the bumps and the clumps in there. You just want to have it all smooth. And then instead of like using a PVA glue, of course you could use the PVA glue, but it smells and it's just not as good as a medium. So I like to use a medium. For example, use the matte medium. But you could also use acrylic binder. I use both of them in my canvas prep course. They're different kind of mediums, but for this purpose you can use both of them. I'm now just using the matte medium, and let's say it's also about a tablespoon. So for this it was chalk, a tablespoon, and half of the amount with a bit of water to activate it, and then the same amount as the chalk you do with acrylic medium. And you could use a retarder for this if you want to last longer. If not, if just for the project, it's just a little bit, I'm using just some paint, and this is just your acrylic paint, and that's about the same amount as you do like the acrylic medium or the chalk. So it's about a tablespoon. And since my chalk wasn't really white, it was a champagne white, you won't really see a white gesso. You know, this paint, I'm using equal amounts as the rest because I want to give it more of a white color. But you don't have to. I mean, if you make a larger amount, this amount probably won't increase because this is just to give it the color. For example, the titanium white, like most gessos have. Otherwise, you could be using just a simple paint and would get really expensive. So no, if you like say using a cup of chalk, then you would use not half a cup, but maybe less to activate the chalk. Then add about a cup of acrylic medium, eyeball it a bit, see if it has the right consistency, and then put just a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons in there just to give it the right color. So now I have it here, and I'm going to grab a piece of paper. I'm using just this one because you'll see the paint better than when I would use like a white one. So I'm grabbing this. I'm just taking the page off, because do you put gesso on paper too? Yes, you put gesso on paper too, because paper has suction too. So gesso isn't just for panels or for canvas, it's for paper too, unless when you're like we're using at the moment acrylic paint. So this is the first one. This was just the cheap one. Put it on here. This was just the house paint version, which is perfectly fine. And this is the chalk version. Put this aside. And I'm grabbing a few brushes just to show you. I have no water on my brush now. I just make it a little bit wet. I have to just a bit better. And you see, it works perfectly fine. And because you have that glue in here, or the acrylic binder in this one, or this is already in the house paint, it's some kind of vinyl acetate that's like a PVA or a glue, and that makes it seals the canvas. So you have the chalk, the baby powder, or house paint just to have the filler. You have the PVA glue or the vinyl acetate that's in house paint. Or I'm rinsing my brush. Can I do multiple things at the same time? Or you use the chalk as the filler, then you use the PVA glue, the vinyl acetate, and you use the acrylic medium to have it like a binder, and then you add paint for pigment. And these were white, and this was mostly white. This wasn't white because I couldn't open the white paint. The other thing why you can use gesso, and that's why the chalk or the baby powder is really good. It makes it not only gritty, it makes it also look matte. You have the matte finish. That's really typical for gesso. So I actually use gesso in my art, not only as a bottom layer, but also as one of the upper layers. And I just mix it with acrylic paint or with pigments, or sometimes even with watercolor, just to give it a matte finish. And over here, you see them, they look similar. And it almost looks like this one isn't really that opaque as this one, but that's probably because I was eyeballing everything. So if it's not opaque enough, you add another layer of gesso. That's what you do with regular gesso as well. I've now painted, brushed in this direction. If you do it on a canvas, or maybe if you do it on here, again, I have a wet paintbrush that maybe makes it a little less opaque too. Next layer, you go over it and do it in the opposite direction. Now I'm not using the next layer because it's not dry enough. But if you use multiple directions, you get the smooth layer if you want to have a smooth surface on your canvas or your paper. If you want to have more gritty, you could use, for example, your brush, but you could also use, like I was having my palette knife, and give it more of a texture. So it's not only gritty, so it gives better adhesion to your paint, but it also gives a texture. And when it dries, it looks really fun underneath your painting. So that's just about your preference. So let's recap. This is the cheap version, and with the cheap version, this is, I'll just write on top, this is baby powder, and you mix it with PVA and a bit of paint. This is house paint, and this is with, it already has some glue in there because that's in the house paint itself, but I'm just getting it more gritty with some chalk. And this one was chalk with acrylic medium and a bit of paint in here. And this would be perfect if you just use it for your, for let's say your journal or personal art. This could be fine for paintings, and actually there are a lot of famous paintings that are using house paint as their base coat, but they say it's not as durable for like centuries, so that's why they don't recommend it, and maybe because it doesn't adhere as much, but it's fine. This just lasts a lifetime, and for most people that's enough if you give this to your friends or for your own projects. Maybe sell it. I used it in some art I sold as well. But this one would be better for your paintings. Could also be for your journal, and it could last a lifetime, but also could last a little bit longer. But since this is, I mean, this is maybe cheaper, except for this one, cheaper than buying gesso, but it's not always easier than buying gesso. So I like to buy a gesso in these containers, and when you buy a lot, the price per brushstroke is less. So yeah, I buy it. This one is Talents, but I don't have a preferable brand. I like to use Liquitex too. Amsterdam, I have loads of them, but if they're in a container, it's not so easy to use. So I like to put them in a clean mayonnaise bottle and use it like this. So now I prepared it just for this artwork, but you could also put this in a container with a sealable lid on there, and then you can use it for a while, for a few weeks, and it would be perfectly fine. So now I'm curious. You can go 3 ways, and I'm curious which one you are going to use. Let me know in the comments if you ever made gesso and which recipe you're most curious about to try, or if you have a different recipe, so we can like exchange recipes like we're our cooking club. If you like to know why prepping a surface is so important, why it matters, and it's such a layer that affects your whole painting process, then you should definitely check out my course, Canvas Prep on Skillshare. I go in depth about techniques, materials, texture building, and everything. You just find the link below. And, remember, it's not about the perfect recipe. It's about experimenting. Yes, you could check YouTube. You could check this video. You could do whatever you want. But if you have a few ingredients, just try and find out what works best for your art process. Because your process isn't my process. It could be totally different, and something different would work for you. So go out, experiment, have fun. Subscribe to this channel if you like to have more of this kind of videos. Like this video, of course. Comment on the video, like I said, with your favorite recipes. Make a recipe book out of it. And I just hope to see you next time. here at this channel to have more creative videos just for you.